As we approach the end of August, officially right now we're talking about September 1st at the time of recording of this video, I thought let's take a look at the downtown Toronto condo market and how it performed in August of 2023. We're going to look at it in detail. We're going to look at downtown overall and then break it down by specific community and specific neighborhood. And this is all key because in just a couple of days, the Bank of Canada is set to meet and make an announcement with regards to the interest rates, which most people are anticipating a hike. So why not cover the downtown Toronto condo market and try to see where it is headed? As always, hello everyone, my name is Sam, a Toronto real estate agent actively working within the downtown Toronto and GTA real estate market. On this channel, I love to discuss everything having to do with the Toronto and GTA real estate market. We like to cover market stats, market trends, buyer advice, seller advice, area analysis, condo reviews, and so much more. So if you find any of this content informative, feel free to subscribe, and definitely if you have any further questions, ask them in the comments or get in touch with me. You can find my contact information in the description box or on the screen. Lastly, I have created a new shorts channel. All the short form type of content that I do on my Instagram or other social media platforms, you can now find on YouTube. All you got to do is just go to my shorts channel. You can find a lot of different and new type of content that's not reused from these long videos whatsoever. Enough of all that. Let's get to the market report. Let's take a look at the downtown Toronto condo market. Before we get into breaking it down by specific community or specific neighborhood, let's take a look at the downtown Toronto condo market overall as a whole. So all in all, as of August 1st to August 28th, because at the time of deriving this data for this video and doing the research, it was only 28 full days into August. So this doesn't account for the last 3 days. Nonetheless, it helps us to get a pretty good understanding of how the condo market in downtown Toronto performed. In August of 2023, the average sold price in downtown Toronto was $781,000. This is downtown Toronto as a whole. What do we define as downtown Toronto as a whole? Well, as always on this channel, as I like to say, we go based on the TREB codes, which are C1 and C8. That is what is considered proper downtown. So this average sold price of $781,000 was based upon, at the time of deriving this data, 298 sales. Now, of course, once again, this doesn't account for the last 3 days of August, but all in all, 298 sales was significantly down from the previous month, July of 2023, and the previous year, August of 2022. That's exactly right. In order to understand what this number even means, these average sold prices and these sales figures, we have to look at it in contrast to the previous month, so a month over month analysis, and the previous year, a year over year analysis. So first, let's take a look at July of 2023, within the same time period in the same area, downtown Toronto. In July of 2023, the average sold price was $794,000. So this August average sold price we have at $781,000 is down $13,000 in total figure and down about 1.6 to 1.7% in terms of percentage point. But as I previously mentioned, it's not just the average sold price that's down on a month over month basis. Sales were also down. The 298 sales or so that we saw in August was significantly down from the 381 sales we saw in July of 2023. So both on the prices and the sales front, the downtown Toronto condo market was down in August of 2023 compared to July of 2023. And as I said, when we take a look at the year over year numbers, the same thing applies. August of 2022 was by far a much stronger month and year for the downtown Toronto condo market, because when we take a look at August of 2022, we saw an average sold price of $797,000 with 354 sales. So both, once again, on a average sold price front and in terms of the sales, the total amount of sales that occurred for condos in downtown Toronto, August of 2023 was down on a year over year basis. So now that we have covered and established downtown Toronto as a whole, let's take a look at downtown Toronto with regards to specific neighborhoods. How much are condo prices in particular neighborhoods? Let's start with Bay Street Corridor. In August of 2023, the average sold price for a condo in Bay Street corridor was $705,000. The median sold price was around $848,000. Now, many people are often surprised when I cover Bay Street because it's one of the more expensive areas in downtown Toronto. And Bay Street corridor is actually quite large swath of land. If you look at it on the map, how it's districted, it stretches all the way from Bloor to Wellington. So it's kind of a north-south community with regards to the TREP codes and the TREP maps, as opposed to the east-west. So this accounts for all the condos near Bloor, all the condos near Wellington, at least this stretch of Wellington. Its sister neighborhood, the Yonge corridor, parallel neighborhood or community you can think of, is much cheaper and much more affordable. Because in August of 2023, in Yonge corridor, we saw an average sold price of $696,000 and a median sold price of $790,000. And as to why Yonge corridor is cheaper, it's a combination of reasons. First and foremost, there are older buildings in Yonge corridor are more depreciated buildings, as opposed to the buildings that are older on Bay Street, for instance. Like directly on Bay Street, there are a lot of old buildings like 1001 Bay or the 600 Bay Street buildings, but they're not as depreciated. So that's number one. Number two, Yonge corridor is a little bit further east, of course, of Yonge Street, and east of Yonge Street can get a little bit sketchy, especially towards the southernmost halves of the Yonge corridor district. We're mainly talking about Dundas Street East and Wellesley Street East. Now, of course, even further east of that in maybe St. Jamestown, or let's say certain areas of Moss Park, it gets a little bit even sketchier, but as you will see, those areas are even cheaper. Which, to transition, let's take up, for instance, Moss Park. We see the average sold price for a condo within the downtown Toronto condo market in August of 2023 was $609,000 in Moss Park, whereas the median was $661,000. Moss Park is one of the cheapest communities within downtown Toronto, and I would say by far the cheapest, but it's usually in competition with Cabbagetown. And let's take a look at Cabbagetown. So just a little bit higher than Moss Park, and the median sold price was also just a little bit higher than Moss Park, and the average sold price was $670,000. So by far, Moss Park and Cabbagetown are the cheapest communities within downtown Toronto for condos. Once again, it's mainly due to the fact that those are the least developed areas as of now. Those areas are the areas where the homeless issue is the worst in downtown. And I'm saying this without any judgment whatsoever, by the way. It's undeniable they do have an impact on property values, for better or worse. And also, it's because a lot of the downtown Toronto condos that were formerly apartment buildings or office buildings that were converted into condos, right? So those are the really depreciated ones. Those are very, very prominent within Moss Park and Cabbagetown. This is not to say that Moss Park, for instance, doesn't have some new buildings that do carry up the averages, do carry up the prices. Moss Park does have some new buildings, and it is under development. And even further east of Moss Park or Cabbagetown, we have Regent Park, which, if you're a longtime viewer of this channel, you know I'm a big fan of Regent Park. I think it's one of the most underrated areas, and I think it's one of the areas that's going to see the biggest boom in the coming years. Well, there, the average sold price was around $685,000, and the median sold price was $665,000. Regent Park formerly was obviously all government housing, but Daniels has come along and really redeveloped the entire area. And basically, it is much superior, I would say, to Cabbagetown and Moss Park. And frankly, I personally, and once again, I'm the exception here, I find it to be superior in terms of end user lifestyle, enjoying downtown Toronto, in terms of summertime athletics, parks, community centers, transit. I find it to be superior to a lot of other areas, even on the west side of downtown, such as Liberty Village, for instance. Speaking of, let's get to the west side of downtown. Let's start with Liberty Village. How is Liberty Village, or the King West Village, performing within the downtown Toronto condo market? Well, here I'm going to take a look at King West Village as a whole, a big chunk of which is accounted for on the behalf of Liberty Village. Well, King West Village, we saw an average sold price of $816,000 and a median sold price of around $700,000. And this is where I'll explain a little bit more about the difference between average and median. Since it was such a low sale month within the downtown Toronto condo market, here the medians are a better measure. Usually when the volume of sales or transactions, whatever you're looking at, when the volume, when the quantity of data is low, median is a better indicator because it's less susceptible to a very high sale carrying up the average and a very low sale carrying down the average. Of course, the most expensive area within downtown Toronto as of August of 2023, which is the case often, was Yorkville. Yorkville is the most expensive community within downtown Toronto. And here I cheated a bit because to really account for the Yorkville community, you have to go a little bit north of Bloor, right? So here to derive the average and median sold prices for Yorkville, I went slightly north of Bloor, which is not C1 or C8 as mentioned top of the video. Nonetheless though, within Yorkville, the average sold price for a condo in August of 2023 was $907,000 with the median sold price of $918,000. Now this may seem low, but keep in mind, Yorkville prices can really swing up and down, mostly up or a little bit less up. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Because oftentimes in Yorkville, you have listings that are going to be on the market for 60, 70 days, even upwards of 80 days, not because they're, depreciated units or they're poorly priced. That could be a possibility, but mainly because we're talking about units in the tens of millions of dollars. Right now, there are 2 active listings in Yorkville, one for 13 million, one for 30 million. As a result, since they're going to stay on the market for a long time, once they have been sold or purchased, they might not be accounted for any given month we're discussing in terms of sales and average sold prices, right? So the average of 907 can be a little bit misleading. It could simply be next month, if we take a look at these numbers, the average could be upwards of 1.1 million because one of the 13 or 15 million dollar units actually sold. But even having said that, 907 is still the highest average sold price of all this list. But now let's get to the waterfront areas. So let's take a look at C1 waterfront and C8 waterfront. Once again, if you do not know what these codes C1, C8, all these codes mean, check out the TREP maps, the link of it in the description box. You can click on that link. It's an interactive map, toggle the communities and toggle the municipalities, and you'll see what these codes really correlate to. So the average sold price for a condo within downtown Toronto in August of 2023 in C1 waterfront was $773,000 with a median sold price of $697,000. C8 waterfront, we saw an average sold price of $779,000 with a median sold price of $760,000. So C8, as I said, is more so the eastern half of downtown Toronto. C1 is the western half. So of course the waterfronts here, C8 waterfront is going to be more so the eastern downtown Toronto waterfront, and C1 is going to be the more western one. And in August and kind of in July, I've seen a lot of demand actually shift towards the eastern downtown Toronto waterfront. Not to say there isn't a lot of demand on the western front, but a lot of the affordable 1+1s and smaller 2 bedrooms that I saw a lot of buyer demand for, those sales and those listings were coming up in the eastern half of downtown Toronto waterfront. Whereas western downtown Toronto, in terms of the waterfront, it's not as if it's far behind the eastern half in terms of the average sold price. It's quite relatively close, but there's more buildings, and as a result, since there's more buildings, there's more bad buildings that carry down the average. Whereas on the eastern half, there are less buildings, there's less inventory, and there are less bad buildings. Not to say there are no bad buildings. Frankly, it's just a simple fact of the matter that there are less of them. And that's a quick review of the downtown Toronto condo market as a whole. It's safe to say, both in terms of prices, sales, most metrics you want to take a look at, the downtown Toronto condo market was down. Now, where things are headed, well, of course, in a couple of days, as I said, the Bank of Canada is going to make an interest rate announcement, and in 3-4 days we're going to have the market stats for the entirety of the GTA with regards to sales, prices, by property type, by location, and a lot of other interesting metrics available to us because the TREP resale market report is usually released within the first 3 to 4 days. So if you want first access to that market report and the charts and all other types of market reports, join my exclusive WhatsApp group chat. You can find the link in the description box, or if you don't want to do that, just stay tuned for the video because obviously I'll be covering in my upcoming videos as well as we approach September, as we approach the next interest rate announcement, which once again, as I mentioned, I think it's going to be a hike, but I could easily be wrong about that. Anyways, this is Sam from SaberiSixRealEstate. Subscribe for more or get in touch with any questions you may have. Thank you very much for watching. Stay safe and stay tuned. Thank you.